A long time ago, in a living room far, far away, two young men at the prime of their lives decided to talk about Star Wars. And 2 hours later, they decided to stop and continue it on another day because once was not enough. And that's why we are here. The Star Wars The Force Awakens, The Talk, Volume 2, as I've called it.
Yes.
Yes, so here we are back again. I'm Maurice Mercado with ScreenBumps. My friend JC is with me again, and we have more to say about this movie. It's not over.
It's not over. This will be a day long remembered.
They've seen the end of Kenobi. They will soon see the end of the rebellion. Anyway, we can quote that movie forever. We can just quote it forever. You know, I find myself quoting Star Wars like a lot more in the last year because of the excitement of this movie and like listening to other podcasts that have to do with Star Wars, and I just find myself just like I'll hear somebody say something and I'll just laugh in my head because I immediately said something Star Wars related in my head.
Yeah,
like go ahead.
For the longest time, when Hillary, my wife, for those who don't know, would say she would say "I love you," I would say like
I know.
One out of 5 times I would say I know.
she probably thought you were such a douche. Like
she didn't get it. No, she didn't get it. And then this last month, when she saw Empire Strikes Back for the first time, she's like,
"Well,
it's great."
Today at work, was it? I don't know if it was today or yesterday, or I think it was yesterday at work. A coworker said to me, they were talking about like just office politics or whatnot, and they said, I don't want to be. I just this is just ridiculous. I don't want to be angry because that's not my thing. And I turned to them and I said, well, because fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate it leads to suffering. And in my head, I was cracking up, but outwardly, I was just like, and they just turned around and were just like, yeah, well, and they just like kept talking, and I was like, they don't get it. They just don't get it.
Oh man, hilarious.
So Star Wars: The Force Awakens. We talked a lot last time, and but we really didn't even get to like the story itself and the movie itself and the story that was told with The Force Awakens. So I really want to get into that, and we'll get sidetracked a little bit. It's going to happen, but let's try to stick to the story this time, and then we can talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we hope to see in upcoming episodes.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it.
But you had an interesting tidbit, because we did talk about the soundtrack, the music of The Force Awakens, which I'm starting to realize it's very multi-layered, because at first listening, I just felt like it wasn't that epic as the other ones. But you have some insight on that.
Oh, right. I never got to share that. First of all, I think the more you listen to it, the more layers you find.
Yeah.
Just kind of peel it away. I think overall still, I mean, again, this is brand new to me. I've only been hearing for a few weeks. I think the more I'll listen to it throughout the year, the more I'll grow attached to it and find different things, emotionally even.
Right.
But and even that goes along in the movie, like once we get it on Blu-ray or whatever, we'll be watching it over and over again and get new insight from, because when you listen to like Empire or A New Hope, the score, you'll hear a cue and then you might say a line. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like maybe you should learn the ways of the Force. Or you might hear a cue of when Darth Vader first comes in, and you might hear in your head like C3 would say, "We're doomed." You know what I mean?
Right.
And but since we've only seen the movie, well, only 3 times, but so recent, we still don't necessarily have all that in mind. You know what I mean? And so once we see it again and then tie the music back with the movie, we'll be able to even catch other things that we haven't noticed before. And my thoughts regarding this score, while I think it actually is more subtle than, let's say, the prequels. I think Williams went super elaborate, and he had some work to draw from. You know what I mean? He used like Anakin's theme. He used elements in there to allude to the Imperial March later on. You know what I mean? Very softly, very delicate, but it was kind of like foreshadowing what's to come. And so he had that to draw from. He's doing a little bit of that with this one, and you can hear some of that. But I think that to preserve some of the mystery and just to clue us in, he held back from really strong musical cues, really strong that are tied specifically to characters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think JJ worked really close with John Williams, which I assume directors would. I mean, if you get to work with John Williams to score a movie that you're directing or creating, but I think that might have been going on during the composition of this movie soundtrack, and in that they were I think John Williams was holding back, but still was able to give little glimpses in the music. I think the best part of the prequels is probably the soundtrack. It's I think
they're amazing.
But in The Force Awakens, I guess it's more subtle, less. It's just less, almost kind of like the less is more. I mean, will we hear the Kylo Ren theme more in the subsequent movies? Will that be the new Imperial March? So these are all questions that we have now, which I imagine
Imperial March is as iconic as like the Jaws theme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
you can't like. The problem with John Williams is John Williams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and one thing that I've noticed about John Williams, and I don't want to get too sidetracked with the soundtrack, but you can tell that during the time that he scored Star Wars, he had also scored Superman, and there's some similarities to a lot of the music in those two scores. During the time that he scored Empire, he had been scoring Indiana Jones, and again, a lot of little similarities in the style. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like sometimes when I listen to it, there's something in the style. Like A New Hope has a lot of horns, a lot of like, it's a lot of, you hear a lot of, it's very brassy.
Yeah.
Whereas Empire Strikes Back is very rhythmic. It's very violins and very just, and then Jedi. Don't do it.
Sorry.
And then Jedi, I think Jedi, it almost sounds like he was experimenting a little bit. Like it's almost like there's horns in it, but it's different. Like especially like when the rebels are attacking the second Death Star, and there's that it's like it's very different.
Yeah.
Very different type of horn. And I mean the Superman theme is it's all like brass. It's I'm just doing the Star Wars theme, but there's a lot of similarities between the Superman theme and Star Wars. They're both very epic, and I think that's I think John Williams evolves like any good artist should do, evolves with the times and with different styles and experimenting with different sounds. And I think he's done that. And in The Force Awakens, he's definitely changed it a little bit. There's a lot of differences. Like the Rey theme is unlike we've heard in any Star Wars movie. It's very different. It's this very like light, like that dun dun dun. It's like that very like little light, almost like piano sound. Did you go back and listen to Dune Sea of Tatooine? Wait, is that the name of the track? Because I've been looking for that track.
Yeah, I think that's the name of it.
I need to really pinpoint that.
You need to do that. You need to go back to A New Hope. I'm trying to find it here. It doesn't matter if I find it because I wouldn't be able to play it. Listen to that theme, then listen to Ray's theme, or maybe the Scavenger, and you're gonna hear subtleties there.
What was the name of that track again?
I think it's Dune Scene of Tatooine.
Yeah, I gotta look for it because the soundtrack that I have has different titles for a lot of these.
Oh, really?
A lot of these. Yeah, so I'll do a little.
Yeah, it's track on. If you go to Spotify,
right.
It's track number 4. It's called the Dune Scene of Tatooine / Jawa Sandcrawler medley.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out, guys. Listen, guys, definitely check that out if you're following along.
And that's when I heard, I'm like, do I hear Obi-Wan? You know what I mean? And I'm like, and then when I read stuff, I like similarities between Rey and Obi-Wan. There's some convincing arguments in that too, and we'll go back to that later.
Okay.
But then I realized after listening to a kind of a not lecture, but a talk on the score for episode 4, what I confused was more of the Scavenger Jawas theme to Rey. I think that's the connection that because they're both scavengers. The Jawas and Rey were both scavengers, and that's what the connection that Williams, I think, was trying to make. And I realized that actually Obi-Wan's theme is the Force theme. And and so I was a little bit wrong on that, but he does draw from previous work and other things as well. And so I think really we're going to look back on episode 7. Once episode 8 comes, we're going to look, a lot of things are going to become more clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even with the music. So,
and that's true. And I think even with the movies and the critiques that exist with this movie, or with the direction that this new trilogy is going. I mean, there was an article that came out today that there's actually a petition that got started that has like 5,000 signatures already, where they're petitioning to ask Disney to have George Lucas involved in Star Wars again, and possibly even have him direct episode 9, because these people that are for this, their argument is that this movie, the series, just by this movie alone, is taking it's going a different direction, and they really need George Lucas's ideas and storytelling of what he was going to do.
Interesting.
So
what do you think about that?
I don't know how I feel about that, because I've watched some recent interviews with George Lucas, and I gotta say, as much as I didn't really like the prequels, I still kind of I still respect the man for creating Star Wars, and for just what he's brought to the table, just in the industry of making movies and the business of making movies, and what he was able to do. He kind of captured lightning in a bottle, as they say. But I just feel like more recently, in a lot of the interviews that I've seen, Charlie Rose did an interview with him that I told you about, and you watched it and listened to it, and I just feel like right now he is almost bitter. He hides it. He tries to hide it well, but it comes out. I think sometimes he's a little bitter about just his career and what he's going to be remembered for. I mean, he wants to be this artist, director, filmmaker, but the masses, or the majority, I think, don't really see him that way. I think he will be remembered as the man that gave us Star Wars, and the man that helped, as a producer or as an innovator, help bring all these great things, like maybe Indiana Jones or Willow, which people often forget. I think that's a great movie. But just the things that he brought to the table, special effects and all these tools for storytelling that exist now. And he brought the idea of just bringing this type of big scale, mythological, fairy tale, whatever you want to call it, to the masses in a way that became popular and became the thing to do. And not that many people have been successful at doing that. And he was. And even though the prequels were not great movies, and great examples of storytelling, they still made a crap load of money, and they still kind of just grew this empire that is Star Wars. I mean, he can't deny the fact that Star Wars has made him who he is.
Right, I don't think he does. I think what happened, it was a snowball that got out of control. You know what I mean? He didn't expect A New Hope 1977 to blow up like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he wanted to continue the story. You could tell though by Return of Jedi, he was kind of like moving towards the direction of the prequels. You know what I mean? Like the story wasn't as cohesive, it wasn't as strong.
And that's the thing. I feel like the reason The New Hope is so special is because it wasn't the movie that he wanted to make. He had to really like hold back, and he had to really like change a lot of things, and he had limitations with technology, and he had limitations with budget, and he had limitations with just the ability to do certain things, and he had to change the story a lot, you know, and he had to kind of give up a lot of things and settle for a lot of things. But I think in that, it inadvertently made the movie that is Star Wars, and it was just magical.
Right.
And I think with Empire, he still had that. He still had certain limitations, but I think what helped him was bringing other people along, like a Lawrence Kasdan, to help write it, and Irving Kershner to direct it. But I think by Jedi, he was like had become more powerful, and it's just like Anakin. The more powerful he became, the more towards the dark side he leaned. And I think.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. Anyway, I agree with you. I think by the time Jedi came out, he was making more of the type of movie that he wanted to make, and it turns out it wasn't that great. So by the time the time came to make the prequels, the prequels are an example of what Star Wars is according to George Lucas, when he has unlimited access to whatever he wants to put on the screen, whereas that's not what we as Star Wars fans want. Like his Star Wars is a lot different than our Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things happen. One, constraints really help in creativity sometimes. When you have too much rain, it sometimes doesn't allow for the conciseness, borders and hindrances help even more creativity often. And I think that's what happened with Star Wars 1977. And, you know, like he only thought that they would be able to make one movie. So the Death Star wasn't even supposed to be in that one. You know, I don't think that Obi-Wan was supposed to even die. But because of those constraints, it made it even more powerful. And then, you know, bringing the Death Star in Episode 4, that was like, to him, I think, like the pinnacle of the story. And, well, we'll have to bring it again. You know, I don't have another idea. That's what it feels like, you know?
The same thing happened with Superman. You know, the Christopher Reeve Superman in the late 70s, it was supposed to be, they were shooting Superman 1 and 2 back to back. And because of money constraints and, you know, a lot of politics and settling for things and just trying to get this movie out, they ended up having to just stop production on all this footage and scenes that they had shot for Superman 2, and they had to focus on Superman 1. And they took the ending of Superman 2 and slapped it on Superman 1, which is Superman making the Earth spin backwards to save the day. And that's why when the Richard Donner Superman 2 came out, he ends up doing that again in that version, because that was supposed to be the original ending. So it's, you know, you're kind of like, man, like what would have happened? I mean, it's still a great movie by itself, and I guess that's why Star Wars: A New Hope is such a great standalone Star Wars movie, because, you know, the only kind of loose end really in the movie is the fact that Darth Vader gets away, but you care more about you care more about these heroes, and they have this happy ending, you know, and they blew up the Death Star and it was epic. So I think if George Lucas I don't know what treatment he had written for these new movies for 7, 8, and 9 that Disney and J.J. Abrams, they decided to not go with that, any of those ideas, and kind of do their own thing. I think George Lucas is a little bittered by that,
Yeah.
because it's almost like, you know, he gave his input, and he was like, he thought maybe, I don't know, maybe he thought Disney was going to be so afraid of messing Star Wars up that they were just going to take everything that he had written and go by that to play it safe. But I think Disney, even though they're getting criticized for not taking a risk with The Force Awakens because people say that it's kind of a rehash of A New Hope, I think they took a risk and said, let's allow other creative people to do this. And I think it worked.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think it was a response towards the prequels. So I don't know. Do you remember the first words in A New Hope? I'm sorry, in The Force Awakens.
The first words.
First words.
It was spoken by
Lord Santeca.
Lord. Yes, it was spoken
when he goes
by him.
into the tent.
Yeah,
and
he
what,
has.
Do you remember what he says?
He gives Poe the map, and I forgot what he says. Go ahead.
He
tell
says,
me.
"This is going to be something like this will begin to make a lot more sense now." Isn't that a slap to the face of the prequels?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then on top of that, when the scene was in the Hosnian system, when the Star Killer base destroys the Hosnians, right before that, you see people come out. I didn't realize this, but one of the senators of Naboo is on that balcony.
is it Gungan?
I don't think it's a Gungan. No, I think it's like a human.
Really?
Now that has to be confirmed. But I did read something like that, and I'm like, they were just like some jabs at the prequels.
Yeah.
You know?
Even that planet. When you look at that planet, I mean, there were a lot of similarities with that planet and Coruscant, which is like this over CGI'd looking planet. And I think the fact that they blew it up kind of was like this movie is kind of doing a clean slate. We're gonna go back to the nitty gritty. This is a nitty gritty galaxy far, far away, like it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know. Well, let's get into this story. Last time, I think we got as far as just we never left Jakku. We got to the part where Poe is captured, taken back to the Star Destroyer. Kylo Ren orders the massacre of a ton of people. We talked about Captain Phasma and her just lack of screen time. I really liked when you get back to the Star Destroyer and you see Poe come out of the ship and they're pushing him around and he just takes a look and he's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Just that, because that his response was kind of like our response. Like, here we are on the bridge, on the deck, or whatever you want to call that, the hangar of this new Star Destroyer that we see. Right. And then you see Finn, who has like his mental breakdown. He takes his helmet off and gets reprimanded by it. And that's the first time we've ever seen anything like that in a Star Wars movie. Like this movie just humanized a stormtrooper,
right?
You know, so I thought that was really cool, and just the fact that now, like we talked about a little bit about their chemistry. I mean, when Finn and Poe escape in a TIE fighter, that was just epic. And one of the few prequel mentions happens when Kylo Ren criticizes General Hux and says, you know, perhaps we should use clones.
Right.
He's like, no, there's nothing wrong with my, you know, with my soldiers. Like they're handpicked from birth or whatever and just trained up, which means there's some kind of facility out there that is basically just plucking these kids and they're going through this, you know, academy that has taken, I don't know, maybe like 20 years to kind of like get this army going.
It must have happened like right after Endor, right? I mean, well, no, because Finn's not 30.
Apparently in the novels, there's supposedly a lot of battles that took place. Like the Battle of Jakku is supposed to be a big battle that took place after the events of Return of the Jedi, like towards the end of the Empire. So somehow the remnants of the Empire must have gathered somewhere. So I think in the next movies we'll probably see some kind of not resistance, First Order, some other base. I mean, because if Starkiller Base was really their home base and that got destroyed, then that means the First Order will now basically just they exist in whatever Star Destroyers they have left or whatever ships they still have in their kind of.
Well, that's not the impression I got. They have other things. I don't know. They may have another Starkiller Base. I kind of hope they don't, but they definitely have another home base. Wherever Snoke is, that's one other place that they can be headquartered. You know.
Yeah.
So, still though, you get the impression that the First Order, they're not as vast as the Empire, so they do have limited resources.
And they shouldn't be. I don't think they should be. I think this needs to be a smaller story. Like I don't think, because I think if you make the First Order the same size as the Empire or bigger, it kind of minimizes everything that took place, all the sacrifice and trouble that the first trilogy did, took place. All the hard work that these rebels went through to try to destroy the Empire and the Emperor, and then to less than 30 years later we have another Empire that's the same size or stronger that emerged. So I think this there needs to be kind of a switch where the First Order is now like this small band of at least now they should be. I mean, the Starkiller Base was a planet. Let's be real. It was a planet, and it was filled with tons and tons of soldiers and machinery and ships and supplies and everything. I mean, Finn was a custodian on it. So if you have stormtroopers that are just dedicated to cleaning it, it had to have been massive, and it had to have had a lot of stuff there. So that gets blown up. That's a huge hit for the First Order. That's a huge hit that they just took there. And meanwhile, the Resistance is just getting stronger with the support of this new Republic. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
This is one thing I like about this new direction, though, because everything is getting tighter and tighter, and not as vast. In the original trilogy, you had the Alliance, or the rebellion against the Empire, and you had the Empire, and it seemed like it spanned the entire galaxy, right? But still, the story was just a little snapshot, like you said last time, of Obi-Wan and the Skywalkers, and Han and this little band of rebels, right? Then you go back to the prequels, and everything is so much world building, and it's so big and so vast, and there's all this. You see the Senate, and it's just too big for some people's taste, mine included. And then this, you're just getting a little smaller and smaller. It's just a resistance. It's just a remnant of the Empire that wants to come back and fill that void, And now with the New Republic, whose key system has been destroyed, now their goal is to fill that void now that has been left. So we see that in the story, and we also see that in the direction. That's one thing I really loved about Abrams. Like, everything was a lot tighter. You didn't have in the special editions of A New Hope, you didn't have little robots flying but behind that were added later. You know what I mean? You don't have all these distractions. He still creates an atmosphere. One of my favorite scenes is when Rey is on that speeder and it's flying by, and you see the little bird knocking on the little metal piece, but it's just a split second, and it looks amazing. But you get it. You feel it.
And or when real, it looked like a real practical, like a puppet or whatever it was.
Right. That there was that. There was also when BB-8 was going along the sand dunes, and you see the little creature on the left hand of the screen, and it's really dark, and he's just turning, look. You know, it's like, okay, there's some character here, there's some life forms, you know what I mean? You get a feel of it, but it's not over the top, you know? And the framing itself is a lot tighter.
Even though it's true, because even the wide shots in this movie don't seem so wide that there's too much to look at.
Yeah.
You know, I love the shot of Ray rocking along the desert with BB-8, because you know when she kind of let him know that he can come back with her.
Yeah.
And you just see this vast desert, and you just see them walking, and it's just beautiful shot. There's a lot of really beautiful shots in this movie, and the movie was shot on film, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But it just has an epic. It's epic, but it's also intimate. So Jakku, I at first I was a little disappointed because I was like, you know what? So we're on another planet that's like so similar to Tatooine. You know, really, like we can't just make it Tatooine. But you know what? It's cool because it kind of grew on me. I kind of learned to accept it because it's like, you know what? This is new. This is fresh. And, the Tatooine is, if there's a bright center of the universe, Tatooine is where it's farthest from. Right. So it's nice to see that there's another planet that's not Tatooine. You know, we've already been to Tatooine a couple of times. But I think it was great that we just really got to see who Rey was. Even though we have no idea who she is, we learned a lot of little tidbits about her, like the fact that she's living in an AT-AT, in a Pure Walker, and she has like an X-wing pilot voodoo doll. Looked like a voodoo doll. And she just has an X-wing pilot helmet that she puts on. I mean, so she is like us, like thinking about, man, these stories of Star Wars and how cool it must have been, and I wish I was there. And so I thought that was a really nice a way to be introduced to this character. And her speeder, the front of her speeder, the grill, is very similar to Luke's speeder.
Interesting.
Like that front grill, it's kind of it's tall, but it's tall, and Luke's speeder is obviously not tall. It's skinny and flat, but it's the same similar shape, even similar color.
It's like it's on its side or something.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look that up. So we meet Rey, and she's a scavenger, and she's scavenging through Star Destroyers, which I think that was so cool. It's kind of crazy to think that she's been just scavenging to bring back to get food and get portions. And then, I mean, like when I saw the movie the second and even third time, like I kind of, my mind kind of went a little bit elsewhere during those scenes, because I was just thinking, like, man, like that's tough. Like she's like marking on the wall all the years, or I don't know if she's counting years or days that she's been alone there, stuck there, waiting for her family. Yeah. And it's like, that's got to be so tough. And like, it's amazing that she hasn't gone crazy or, tried to just gone insane. Really, it shows her strength and resilience, but it also shows her loneliness.
Yeah, when she's cleaning that part that she's going to trade in for some food, and she's looking at that old lady doing the same thing, and she kind of looks at her as to say, "Is this going to be me? Right? Like, is this my future?" And just like Luke looking onto the horizon, seeing the dual suns go down, that was her moment. Like looking at that and kind of like, man, like what am I waiting for? And whereas Luke wanted to get off off that planet and go and have another life of adventure and do something with his life, Rey wants that, but she has this duty, this unwavering ability to say no, and kind of has convinced herself that her family is going to come back for her, and if she leaves, she's going to miss them.
That's one thing I liked about the movie. Like, even though there was a lot of mirroring of the original trilogy and the journey that Luke took, they played around with that. You know what I mean? Like, they took a similar journey, but yet you saw reflections of that, but in a different way. Right. That longing for for something else was both evident, you know. But what, like, just like you said, Luke wanted to leave, Rey wanted to stay. What's important to her is her family coming back to her, a sense of belonging, you know. Luke kind of had that with, you know, his aunt and uncle, but he wanted something else. It was a boring life, you know. Rey's having a boring life, but wants that family.
And she has a lot more skills. I mean, she obviously can pilot. She can, you know, drive speeders. She can fight. She can protect herself. She's self-resilient. She's reliant on. She's you know, very selfless, as she proves when she has the opportunity to. She's not selfish. You know, she has the opportunity to sell BB-8 for like you know, an entire whatever month's portion of food, and she doesn't. So she's loyal. So she has a lot of great qualities, and it's amazing that hasn't been beaten out of her because of the rough life that she's had. And I think she's rewarded. I think it's because the Force has been, like you said in the last show, she has been calling to her, and she's been kind of ignoring it. It's been dormant in her. And I really like that idea that the Force has awakened in her.
Right.
through her. I think that the Force is going to be awakened through her, because I think one of the things we're probably going to see in the next movie is that she is going to be a breath of fresh air for Luke. You know, I think Luke has kind of lost faith in himself and the Force, and that's why he went away.
You know, and I wonder if that was, I mean, we're jumping ahead here, but the last scene of The Force Awakens, that's the face that I feel Luke has. One of, like, man, like a burden, like, oof, like, I gotta go through with this, you know? Like
he was waiting to see, like, I'll get involved again if I have a reason to. Like he was talking to the Force, like, Force, I'll do this, but you gotta give me a sign. You gotta give me a reason. And the Force sure delivered, because the Force brought Rey with his old lightsaber,
right,
something that he had lost in a moment of weakness, in a moment when he was weak, when he didn't listen to Yoda and Obi-Wan, and he went headfirst into battling Darth Vader, and losing his hand and that lightsaber is a reminder of, you know, what happens when you're too hasty, and when you don't trust in the Force, and you don't trust, you know. And I think that's,
wow,
to have that brought back to him, it's kind of like, man, you know,
I didn't even think about that. I was thinking more of like the duty that he must have felt, like, oh wow, this is like, I went away, self-exile. Maybe it was to get back to the root of what the Force was, or to be enlightened, or maybe it was just hiding out because of what happened, that, you know, we don't know the full story. But yeah, that's a great point.
Even the fact that, you know, I mean, that lightsaber was given to him by Obi-Wan, who had been in hiding, and that was like the catalyst to, I mean, obviously also his aunt and uncle getting killed was like the reason why he said, all right, I got nothing else here, let me just go with you. But getting that lightsaber and getting that introduction to what the Force is, was the catalyst, was what started this whole thing. And here we are, this character is bringing this lightsaber back to him as to say, you know, you gotta do this. You gotta get back on the horse.
And you know what? That's one thing that's poetic with the idea that Rey is a descendant of Kenobi. You know, kind of coming full circle. You know, Obi-Wan Kenobi trained Luke, and then now Luke is training his offspring, or his descendant. You know,
right.
And there is something beautiful about that. I'm not saying that's the case, because you know what? I'm beginning to think they don't even know, the writers. I feel like they have like this idea, right? And they can go several directions, and based on interpretations, based on what they're feeling like, okay, let's go this direction. I think they're gonna make, you know, as they go along, kind of what like George Lucas did.
Yeah, I think George Lucas totally did that. I mean, he would love everybody to believe that he had it all planned out, and he knew.
No way. He had no idea that Luke and Leia were going to be twins.
Exactly. He made them make out in one movie. And there's a deleted scene in Empire where they literally do make out.
Shut up. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
I did not know this.
There's an alternate version of the scene when she kisses him to make Han jealous. There's an alternate scene where they keep getting interrupted, but they're about to like have a really passionate kiss because their attraction is undeniable. And I'm so glad that got cut out.
Hey, you know what I just thought of? What if, in Empire, when Yoda is saying, oh, not Empire, Return of the Jedi, when Yoda is saying, when Luke leaves, no, I'm sorry, it is Empire. When Luke leaves and Obi-Wan says that was our last hope, and Yoda says, no, there's another. What if that's not Leia that he's talking about?
It wouldn't surprise me, being that in that movie, when they made that movie, there was no thought of Leia being the sister, the twin sister. So it could be. I mean, that would be an interesting twist. I would love to see that, especially like I want in this next movie. And I know we're kind of doing this backwards. Now we're talking about what we want the next movies to be about, and we haven't even talked about this movie. But I want the next movies. I would love to see a ghost Yoda or a ghost Obi-Wan in these next movies, like, or just some, because I mean, they have to still be communicating to Luke. I mean, all these years, Luke has had to been able to tap into that and use that, especially for wisdom, for guidance, and Obi-Wan tells him at the end in Jedi when Yoda dies, and he's like, I can't do this alone, and Obi-Wan Force Ghost comes and says, Yoda will always be with you. Yoda, meaning that they're always going to be there for him for guidance. He's not alone. So
and
I would love to see that.
Not to like get too sidetracked, but I do want to see a Force Ghost. I could definitely see a Yoda Force Ghost. I don't know how I feel about an Obi-Wan because Alec Guinness is gone, and I don't know how I feel about Ewan McGregor reprising that. You know what I mean? Going back to his younger self.
Listen,
like it could just be his voice.
The way technology is today, they can totally do like a CG Alec Guinness, the way they did Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator Genesis, and use Ewan McGregor as the voice.
Huh.
And it's a Force Ghost, so it doesn't have to be super clear. It could be kind of like wavering, and you can't really make it out, not super crisp. They could totally do that, and I would be totally fine with that. Because let's face it, Obi-Wan Alec Guinness didn't look the same in all three movies. His Force Ghost kept looking older and older as the movies went on.
His hairstyle changed. Like he went to a Force barber.
Yeah, he went to the Force Ghost barbershop. It's the only one, by appointment only. So another beautiful thing in this movie is the fact that we see the Falcon again. We talked about that. The fact that we see Han and Chewie. I don't know how I felt at first, and I still don't know how I feel about the fact that like Han Solo kind of like, and that was one of the criticism I read, people saying, well, Han and Luke are quitters. Like these are the heroes from the original trilogy, and we find out that they both quit. Luke quit being a Jedi, and Han quit being a hero and a general to go do what he used to do, to be a scoundrel and con people and be a hustler. He's got like this big freighter that he had a whole like crew on, and they're hunting down whatever these creatures are, and I don't know how much they're gonna get.
Raptors? No.
Rathtars.
Rathtars. Yeah. Okay.
And dude, I'm reading your notes. You wrote it down. Rathtars. It's right there. And
okay, you know what?
I don't know how I felt about him on a freighter. Originally there were rumors that this movie was going to open up with the realization that Han and Chewie are actually piloting. He's a general, and he is commanding a Star Destroyer that now is part of the Republic. And I think that information probably leaked based on I don't know what, but I think what we did see is him kind of running the show on this big freighter, because that thing was huge. I mean, if it was able to engulf the Millennium Falcon and had its own hangar inside. But I don't know how I felt about that at first. I was just so blinded by the fact, I still am, by just how awesome it is to see Harrison Ford and Han Solo. I see Han Solo and Chewie like together. Like they're still hanging out. They're still doing life together. Like that was just so cool.
Okay, first when they're running, I think we mentioned this last time, when they're running to the transport, whatever it's called, to escape Jakku, and
the quad
jumper, and Finn says, "How about that?" He's like, "That's garbage," and then go back, and then you see the camera pan after the quad jumper explodes, and you see the camera pan to see the Falcon. The theater erupted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, oh, I mean, I was a guy. I was like, wow, and then same thing when we saw it in the commercial or the trailer, but still was impactful when we saw them. You know, it didn't bother me so much that where Han and Luke are. First of all, Luke didn't quit right away. I mean, he went and did what Yoda suggested, and he trained other Force-sensitive people. You know, he did that. Now, there were certain circumstances that occurred, and I think there's a lot. See, I give him the benefit of the doubt because I feel like we don't know exactly what he's doing over there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that's one of the criticism. I mean, I'm fine with it. The fact is, he's human. He may be a Jedi, and he may be the last Jedi, and he has a huge responsibility, but he's also just human. Just Han Solo as well. Han Solo is just human, and their one and only son, from what we know, turned to the dark side, and they lost him. And I think that drew a wedge in his relationship, not Wedge Antilles, but they drew a wedge in his relationship with Leia, and he needed a way to kind of distract himself, and being part of this resistance, you know, probably wasn't his thing. Like he was like, no, I can't, I'm not going to do this again. But that's Leia's shtick. She loves that, and they even say it in the movie. They each went back to do what they did best, and that's fine, you know. So for me at first it was a little uneasy to kind of see that, because it's a little bit disappointing. But I think it's because in my mind I wish I knew like what they were up to these last 30 years, you know, and so many stories in between that can be told, you know.
The saddest thing to me is you're not going to see Luke, Han, and Leia together again.
Right.
You know? Right. That kills me, because I was really hoping to see that happen after so many years.
Right. We're never going to see a Han and Luke, you know, and those two they became brothers through all this, you know.
Yeah.
So it also opens up begs the question of like, what happened there as well? I mean, you know, with Luke, I mean, is Luke does he feel guilt that he messed up Han's son basically and allowed him to kind of fall for Snoke? But I guess these are all things that we're going to find out, hopefully. How did Snoke get Ben's ear and get him to become Kylo Ren and become a Knight of the Ren? Who are these Knights of the Ren? You know, who the heck is Snoke? You know, there's so many theories out there.
Yeah.
So it was great to see Chewie and Han, and we said this last time. It was great to see Chewie like get a lot of action pieces, be involved in all this action.
He was amazing.
He was
and
amazing.
The banter, how they just like old times, you know.
Yeah. And the comedy on the Falcon with them and Rey and Finn was great too, especially like before they meet up with Han and Chewie. How, you know, Finn is trying to hide the fact that he isn't part of the Resistance, and BB-8 knows it, and he's kind of begging him to. I love BB-8. We said that before, like the lighter thumbs up.
Man. He won me over. He won me over.
That was just great, and even the comedy with Han, you know, where Rey is like, "Oh my gosh, this is the ship. This is the Millennium Falcon. This is the ship that did the Kessel Run in 14 parsecs," and he's like 12. You know, I just love that.
Hey, what was the scene? Last time we spoke, what was the scene that kind of took you out of the movie?
Well, Snoke. The scene with Snoke took me out of the movie because I just feel like he was too CG, and I would have preferred. I mean, I would have preferred, like, they can do Snoke as a person. I mean, maybe they can't because maybe he is a very tall, dangly person but I mean, if you look at a lot of like Guillermo del Toro's movies, like Labyrinth, and I mean, you could have gotten the guy from Labyrinth that's really skinny and tall to like get into a suit and have makeup, and you could have Andy Serkis do the voice or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. I wanted everything else is so practical. Why couldn't this character?
But we don't know the full story. I think we'll find out next episode why it was. Maybe he can shapeshift.
Maybe he's not a person at all. Maybe he's a force ghost that they've been able to encapsulate in some device that they can project via hologram or something like that. I mean, who knows? Maybe he doesn't even exist. Maybe
so I had the same issue that you had about the CGI, but not with Snoke so much, with the scene with the Raftars, actually.
Right.
That took me out.
Well, even before that whole exchange between those two gangs and Han, as cool as that was, and that was like all world building, like these are some gangs that, you know, exist and stuff like that. Something about it didn't feel like Star Wars because we're not used to that. Like, we're used to seeing bounty hunters that don't talk.
Right.
You know, we're used to seeing a lot of background people that look really cool, but we never see them have like a conversation like that. Like the closest to that we've ever seen is the Greedo Han Solo conversation that was basically Han Solo in English, Greedo with subtitles, or the deleted scene with Jabba and Han talking. But we don't really have never had these other human gangs. One is like an Asian gang, and the other one is like a Scottish gang. Like,
if maybe one of the gangs looked like aliens and spoke in the alien language, it would have felt more like it. You know?
Right. I mean, the Asian looking gang looked like they were speaking with subtitles.
Yeah.
But again, it's like you look at that and you're like, all right, well, are they speaking space, Chinese, Japanese, or whatever? Thailand, you know, I don't know.
It's still better than a trade federation.
Yes, it's still better. And it was a pretty funny exchange with Han Solo, kind of like trying to, you know, schmooze his way, talk his way out of it. But yeah, those creatures, that did take me out a little bit as well. I agree with you.
What's important about that scene is that Chewie gets injured, right?
Yeah.
And that plays a role throughout the rest of the movie. It helps add like Finn and Chewie gain a rapport. It shows what Han's been doing. There's a few things that establish. It shows,
but it wasn't like everything else about it. Like the fact that they have to deal with these two gangs, the fact that those creatures escape. None of that was really necessary. Like we could have just had a scene where they're on there and maybe they're about to be attacked by a rival gang. Maybe and it's more like ship to ship kind of type of thing. And maybe they decide to, like, they don't know the Millennium Falcon's on board here, so let's just like bust out of here on the Millennium Falcon and leave this ship behind or blow it up so that they think that we're dead or whatever. And maybe they see the Millennium Falcon going into hyperspace, and that's when, you know. But like the whole thing of running down these corridors, like that part of running down the corridors, that felt like a set, like that.
It felt more like Aliens.
Yeah, it felt like Aliens, but it felt like a set. It felt like a very enclosed set. Like you could tell that they kept using it almost looked like they kept using the same hallway over and over again from different angles, and they all managed to end up in the hangar. You know,
here's the one thing that I liked about that scene, and I'll have to see it, like I'll have to watch again to be sure. But when the rafter is first coming, it looks like a big ball just rolling. And Han does one of these kind of things.
Yeah.
I think they were paying homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yep, the way he moved back was totally Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
That was like his way of saying, like, oh, you know, in Raiders, I did this thing, and JJ was like, yes, do that, perfect. You know, quicker, more intense, faster, more intense. Oh no, that's George Lucas.
That's Lucas.
Those creatures actually look like not Sarlacc, Minox from Empire Strikes Back that attach to the ship and they have that little mouth.
Yeah. Oh, the mouth part. Yeah.
I thought they were Minox, and then they decided to be Rathtars. So anyway, they escape and they go to Maz Kanata, and you know the reason they go to Maz Kanata was because, according to Han, they need a clean ship to get back to the Resistance because he doesn't want to risk taking the Falcon to the Resistance and exposing their location, which I understand. But again, this is like another stop on this journey like that could have been avoided, you know, but we have to do this because we have to go there. We have to have another set piece. We have to have another stop in this journey.
Well, was it just because of that, or wasn't it also because Finn was trying to find transportation out of there?
Well, they're trying to get transportation back to the Resistance. That's the whole thing. And that's the whole reason why they meet with Maz. They need a clean ship to bring you guys back to the Resistance.
I mean, I've heard arguments that, like, this is all, like, I don't know, the will of the Force. You know what I mean? Like, the Force is manipulating things so that Rey can get to Luke.
I think it's just it's the storytelling. I think it's kind of like when, you know, it's like you're playing Legend of Zelda, and, you know, in order to get to the castle, you first have to go through to this place to get this, and you need to go over here to get this, and then you'll be able to go over there. Like, it's just this way of storytelling that it works, but at the same time, the more you think about it, the more you're just like, couldn't they just avoided all this and just gone, you know?
Well, I just don't think that's the case. It can't be. If that's just the case, then that's really weak, because I feel like it has to be connected to the Force. Like, how are they, out of all the planets that are going to, why do they go to the one that has Luke's lightsaber?
Right.
That calls.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
That calls her. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, you know, it's not all coincidence. You know what I mean? That's too crazy.
And if that's the intent, because we're speculating, we want it to be that. But if that's the intent, then bravo. Like, then yes, definitely, that's so cool that the Force, that, you know, it wasn't the midichlorians, it was the will of the Force that drove them to Maz, and Maz is aware of the Force from what when we meet her. Yeah. Which I like that character. I think that was like the Yoda of this movie.
Yeah.
And I want to know how she got her hands on that lightsaber. And
I also like the fact
it's in a similar case to the case that Obi-Wan had when he had it in Tatooine.
I know. Interesting. Very interesting. You know, also, like, it kind of, I don't know, do we get the idea that Maz is Force sensitive, or she just knows about it?
Well, she says, I'm no Jedi, but I know the Force.
Okay.
So she does feel the Force.
Okay. Because and that's because if I don't know if it's so much in the films, but outside, like, still canon, maybe Legends, you get the idea that there are other Force sensitive people out there that are not Jedi or Sith.
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, that is true, because the Knights of the Ren, which is where Kylo Ren came from, they're not Sith, and they're not referred to as Sith. And even Maz says, you know, I've seen a lot of evils. I've seen the Sith. I've seen the Empire. Now the First Order. So yeah, I think the Force can be used in different ways. This is like another kind of like sect, if you want to call it that, of the Force. And Maz maybe is somebody that's Force sensitive, but has never. There hasn't been a Jedi Order. There hasn't been like this an organized religion of the Jedi. You know, so even though she's lived a long time, maybe she was gonna be a Jedi and she didn't. Like, kind of like how in the prequels, I hate to bring it up, but even like in the prequels, like Count Dooku left the Jedi Order. Yeah. You know, and that was okay according to the rest of the Jedi. They were like, oh yeah, he was a Jedi once, but he's off doing his own thing, and that's cool. We sent him off, in peace. So maybe Maz is somebody that is Force sensitive and just never took on the mantle of being a Jedi, but maybe she can. I mean, if she's the fact that she's lived that long and she's had that castle and she's been able to run her little business that long, or whatever else she was doing for that long without any interruptions, your Force has been with her. So, but then, the Force, the story and the will of the Force, unfortunately, brings Kylo Ren to this place, and it's to the detriment of her place. So it gets all destroyed. There's a battle. I think it's an awesome battle. We see Finn fighting a stormtrooper. We talked about that last time.
That should have been Phasma.
And that should have been Phasma. We see that Han Solo knows that that's Kylo Ren is there, and he immediately knows that that's her son. That's their son. He tells Leia that. We get the beautiful Leia Han meetup. That's kind of like
I love C-3PO seeing in that.
Kind of the intro. Yeah, C-3PO looked weird in this movie, and it wasn't the red arm. I think the red arm was there to distract us for the fact that Anthony Daniels can't really fit into the regular C-3PO suit anymore, so they had to create an alternate C-3PO suit in this movie for him.
Okay.
And for some reason, to me, it looked wider.
Like he's gained weight or something.
Yeah, it just looked wider and off, and I think maybe they threw in that red arm to kind of like throw us off and just like, oh, well, he has a red arm.
Actually, they may have done that, but there's also a comic that I heard, or something, like a graphic novel, something.
Well, of course, yeah, that's part of the story.
They're going to talk about that, like what happened, you know?
So, and there wasn't a lot of C-3PO or R2-D2 in this movie, and it's weird because they're the two characters that we kind of have been following along.
Right,
through all this. So in this movie, it's really BB-8 takes that mantle.
Yeah.
And we talked about R2-D2, who's in like standby mode or whatever, sleep mode. And let's see, where are we? What else? So Rey gets captured, which I thought was interesting because she becomes a damsel in distress for a minute.
Right, yeah.
But when Kylo Ren tries to interrogate her, the Force does awaken in her, and she starts to use these powers, and she starts to read his mind, and his biggest fear is that he will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
And, I think I mentioned to you before, that's probably one of my favorite scenes of the film.
Aside from her using the Jedi mind trick on the James Bond Stormtrooper. It's
just, okay, first of all, I think that... Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, I think his acting was amazing in that scene.
Yeah. And he looks like Harrison Ford, I think. And he was acting a lot like Anakin. I mean, I think he really channeled Anakin and Han Solo in this movie. Like those two characters, those two.
But I don't know if I see Han. But.
I mean, it's believable that he could be Han's son.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's believable that he is like the angry son of a Han Solo. You know, like he didn't get the fathering that he should have gotten because Han Solo isn't a perfect guy.
Right.
You know?
And so, I mean, that scene was incredible. I think just like the back and forth between him and Rey, where just you see the change in her, how through his mind reading, she's able to enter into his, and there's like fear in him, you know, and it's actually that scene, somewhere in that scene that either was cut out or maybe not done for the film, I don't know, but it's in the novelization where he says, "It is you," you know, and so again, this is where based on that and other things, I'm like, okay, so they have a history, they know of each other, you know.
Yeah, maybe she doesn't because she doesn't remember.
You know, and maybe she was a little kid, and that's why he didn't even recognize her at first, you know. But this is again, I don't know what her parentage is, but there is a history there. And
remember when that soldier tells him that they escaped and they believe a girl helped them, and immediately when he hears "girl," he flips out.
Oh, is that when it happened? Okay, I have to.
He flips out when he says a girl helped me. He starts striking and you know. And I mean, so he knows that there's something about Jakku that's kind of, he's on edge about that. And then when he hears about this girl that helped him escape, that tosses him over. So that's even more. I mean, we're speculating, but that's even more evidence, I guess, to that theory.
Wow, I'll have to pay attention to that next time.
Yeah. So we see the Resistance base, which I think was a really cool base. It was very reminiscent of Yavin 4, reminiscent of Yavin 4, and we see like all these. I think it was such a cool scene to see them all kind of on this controlled center, and they're all kind of like, you know, doing stuff. They're all on computers and doing things, and there's the scene, you know, there's the infamous, like, you know, we got to destroy the Death Star scene. We saw it in A New Hope. We saw it with Amar Akbar and what's her name, Mon Mothma. in Jedi, and then we see it in this movie. And what was interesting is I just found out the actor that did the voice of Admiral Akbar and the actor that did the voice of Nien Nunb
are the same ones.
Are the same ones. These people came back.
That's awesome.
And that's how cool it was. So that is actually Admiral
Wedge.
Akbar. Yeah, Wedge, the actor that played Wedge, I think he didn't want to do it. He said he didn't see a point, which kind of messed up. I think he's just a little jaded because they only used his actual voice in Jedi, and he was dubbed in Hope and Empire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I mean, I love that scene. You saw like the whole gang together again. It really brought you back to the original trilogy, and seeing Leia back in command again. It did evoke feelings of like, okay, it's not the Rebels, but you get the same feeling, you know?
Yeah. So they basically, the plan is we disable the shields, we blow it up. We disable the shields, we blow it up. So
I had a little problem with that scene, and I know that like I just don't know what I think about the Star Killer thing. Like I accepted it. The more I think about it, the more I get away from it, the more I'm like, really, you know what I mean?
It was that's the thing that was rehashed, and that's the thing that was a little bit too convenient. That of all the people there, Han and Chewie are the ones that are going to get in there, disable the shields with Finn because they got to weigh in, and it just, and I think those scenes happen so fast that they don't give us time to think. It's just like, this is what we're going to do, and let's go do it. And that lets we're in it.
That's one of my complaints of the film. It was like every few minutes, it was like all this action. So I was into it the whole time. There was really no downtime. The pacing was, I might rather have quicker pacing like that than slower, but we needed to have a little more beats.
Well, what's interesting? I saw it for the second time with my wife and my brother-in-law and my father-in-law. And my father-in-law, his only complaint with the movie was that the middle was too talky.
Huh.
And he kind of said, well, but that's fine, because a lot of these type of big action movies, they start out with a lot of action in the front end, and they end with a lot of action at the end, and so you need a time to kind of catch up in the middle. And I agree, but I just don't like, and his personal thing. He's like, I just don't like the boring middle, And so I found that interesting, because I'm like, man, like, was there like a boring middle? Because I mean, there was a lot of scenes where there was the interrogation, and there's the Maz Kanata scenes, and but like, it wasn't like, and there was the Han and Leia scenes, but that was about it. There wasn't like a lot of exposition and downtime.
Yeah.
It was boom, boom, boom. But that in particular, this plan to go blow up Death Star Killer base, it just happened so fast that it's true. I feel the same way. I feel like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, man, like, it is a little convenient that there is a Star Killer base, like another Death Star. But they say it in the movie, another Death Star.
They kind of felt like they knew that would be a criticism, so it was kind of tongue in cheek. It was kind of like, let's make fun of ourselves, and Han says, so it's bigger. You know what I mean? And then he says, well, these things always have some kind of like weakness, Yeah. So I mean, I kind of got over it. But again, the more I get away from it, I'm like, I don't know.
And I
just saw A New Hope. I mean, I didn't see A New Hope. I just was watching a clip of the Battle of Yavin, and man, that music is incredible. It's and then the trench run and all that. And you know what? I kid you not, man. I don't know how many times I've seen that movie. I mean, it must have been maybe about an hour and a half ago that I put that clip on, and the whole scene where Obi-Wan says, "Use the Force, Luke," and he turns off his guidance system. And
targeting computer.
Force theme. Huh? Targeting computer, right. And you hear the Force theme, and I am still in suspense. I don't know if it's the music. I don't know if it's because this is a pivotal moment, where Luke actually changes. You know what I mean? This is the switch. This is what like makes him a hero. This is the antagonist that he defeats himself. You know,
Rey has that moment when she's fighting Kylo Ren in the forest, and she gives into the Force, and then she is kind of like pumped up with the Force and is able to defeat him. So that was like her moment of giving in when she catches the lightsaber in the air too. Those were kind of like her first steps into a larger world.
But like, I just feel like, I don't know, they could have done something different instead of that. Anyways, speaking about pacing though, one of the things that kind of bothered me too, we're nitpicking here, is the very end, and when they find the map, R2-D2 miraculously wakes up, and then Rey, Chewie, and R2 go to this planet that Luke's in. That journey is super quick. You know what I mean? It's like, what in the world? I did not like that. Like, the steps took longer.
That's why I said last time that I know that they needed that scene, but I just felt like it just feels like an after credit scene, an extended after credit scene that they couldn't do after the credits. They needed to do it within the movie. And
it should have been some kind of journey, even a montage, not of like going through systems and like time elapsing.
Or making a couple of stops, because it's like, they had this map. So it's like, how do they know that was the final piece in the map? Like, maybe he's somewhere else in the map, there should have been, like you said, like a little bit of a montage. I mean, there was a montage when in the prequels when Anakin is on Tatooine looking for his mom that was captured by the Sand People. There was a montage about him finding her. It wasn't like he went straight there.
Right,
so they could have done a little bit of a montage, and then you could take your time going up the stairs. And I mean, I said what I needed to say about the ending. I like seeing Luke Skywalker again, but I just felt like it didn't feel like a Star Wars ending. And one of my biggest fears, and I think we'll close it out with, what we want to see next and our kind of final thoughts. My final thoughts here is my fear, and I know that fear leads to anger, and anger to hate, and hate to suffering. But my fear is that I remember watching The Phantom Menace, first, second, third, even fourth time.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this wasn't a great, perfect movie, but it's the first of a new trilogy, so I can't wait to see what they do next. And this is just a first step. They got it out of the way. They introduced this new world, these new characters. The next ones, man, those are the ones that are going to really bring it home and make them classics. Yeah. And that never happened.
Yeah.
And so that's my fear. Like, this movie did a great job at reintroducing Star Wars to the masses. And I just hope they don't, like,
I'm okay. Johnson better do it. He better come through.
Oh, my gosh, I'm so fearful. So my final thoughts to this are, it's a great movie. And it was a really good Star Wars movie. It's ranked number 2 on my list. We talked about our list last time. If you haven't, and you want to sit through 2 hours of us talking about Star Wars, it's in the first episode at volume 1 of this. But we ranked them towards the end of the video. This one became my number 2 Star Wars movie. I can't wait when it comes out on Blu-ray. I'm probably gonna watch it over and over again. It's gonna drive my wife crazy. But it was great. It was fun, and it was a Star Wars movie. There's another Starkiller base. Han Solo dies, and we already talked about that. But we're introduced to these new characters that we're excited about, and I just hope that they don't screw this up. I just hope that the hands that J.J. Abrams is passing these on to, J.J. Abrams is not involved. I think he's only going to be producing.
He's consulting a bit, though.
He's probably consulting, but Lawrence Kasdan is not involved. He's writing the Han Solo movie, and then that's it. He's done with Star Wars. So I just hope, man, I really hope that they don't mess this up. I'm looking forward to episode 8, and I want it. It's okay if they make it different, if it's a different type of Star Wars movie. And if they change things up a little bit, okay, I'm okay with it as long as they do it in a good way. They respect what was established. They respect the characters. Let us know who the heck Rey is and who Snoke is, and don't screw it up. I don't want to find out that Rey is just I don't know. I don't even know what I would want at this point. All I know is that I want another good Star Wars movie, and I want this new trilogy to be classics. They may not be classics for us, but I want my sons to one day watch these movies and be like, oh man, these are great Star Wars movies. You know, like I really want that.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? It might be fun. Maybe next, if we ever do this again, talk about what we do want. Like maybe even imagine if they gave it to us, what would we do with it?
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
I know what I would have done, or what I would have wanted, not done, but what I would have wanted out of the prequels.
Yeah.
So that's a discussion for another day. We can definitely do a prequel alternate universe story that we can design ourselves from scratch. We'll do that in soon. But yeah, like what I would want. Yeah, we should definitely talk about that. So, what are your final thoughts, JC? As we close this out?
I don't know how I feel about General Hux. Domhnall, Gleeson. I've liked him in other movies. I don't know. It was maybe a little over the top to me. I feel like maybe if he was an older guy, maybe a guy from the Empire, you know. While at the same time, the fact that he's young, also he has a lot to prove.
Maybe, you know, what if he's Admiral Piet's son or something, or grandson? I mean,
yeah, that's true. Huh? I wonder. There's that. Man, we didn't even talk about all the characters. How do we not do this? There's so many characters we haven't even talked about. Like the fact that Finn FN 2187. Do you know where that number comes from?
2187. That's the call number and from A New Hope. The whose call sign was that?
No, that's Leia's jail cell.
Oh, Leia's jail cell. Yeah, yes, right. That's right. That's where they say 2187. It's over there, right?
Yeah. Things like that. Anyways, there's a lot of great things like that. I guess my final word is we did this in the first one that will never see the light of day. But
right. Just to let everybody know, we recorded an episode that was going to be the definitive show about this movie. And we just rambled so much.
It's like the prequel that was never made.
And we got nowhere. So we decided to redo it. And that was the previous volume, as we're calling it. And now this is volume 2. So that one, maybe one day we'll release that one as the
director's cut. Social edition. But okay.
So I have like flying robots behind me in every scene.
Out of 10 Death Stars, what would you give it?
10 Death Stars?
Yeah.
Wow. Out of 10 Death Stars, I think
5 Death Stars, whatever.
Let's do 5. 10 is a lot. 5 Death Stars. Okay, out of 5 Death Stars, I would give this. Well, I'll say this: when I first saw it, the first couple times I saw it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like 4.5." You know, this is almost perfect.
Yeah.
Now that I've been able to digest it more and think about it and talk about it, I would say this is 4.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect movie, but it's a Star Wars movie. It's a Star Wars movie, and I've been wanting to see a new Star Wars movie, and this gave me that.
Yeah. I would say it's also for me 4 Death Stars, but that 4th Death Star is like the one orbiting the forest moon of Endor.
So it's like
yeah, it's not complete.
But that second Death Star was supposed to be bigger and more powerful than the original.
Then my analogy is destroyed.
Well, JC, thank you so much for doing this for me, buddy. And I hope to do this again with you. I want to talk. I would love to sit and talk about the prequels.
Yeah.
And I would love to sit and talk about what our dream episode 8 and 9 would look like.
Wow. I will. Yeah, let's do that. I will have to see the prequels again. I think at some point I vowed that I never would. Maybe we could watch the anti-cheese ones on YouTube. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've seen the prequel so many times that they're like ingrained in my head.
See, I just couldn't do it. I probably haven't seen one in like 10 years.
Yeah, but, I sat through them a few months ago because friends of ours had seen the original trilogy and they had not seen the prequel trilogy, so we did a marathon of the prequel trilogy. And I gotta say, as excited as I was to watch it with people that hadn't seen it because it's Star Wars and you're excited, I went home and I turned to my wife and I'm like, all right, I don't need to see the prequels again until my 3 and 1 year old are old enough to understand them and see them. Like that's probably gonna be the next time I see them. So I might just skim through them just to kind of pinpoint some of the things that I like, some of the things that I didn't like, and we can talk about them there. Yeah. And I also have an idea, some ideas and thoughts about these anthology movies, these Star Wars story movies that are coming out. Rogue One, Han Solo, and then the third one has not been announced, but I have an idea for what I would love to see that third one be. So again, I'm Maurice from SCREENBUMS. JC, thank you for joining me.
Hey man,
we'll put some of our notes. I'll put some of these notes when I upload the video, and I'll put it up on the website so you guys can see it. If you have any questions or any comments, you can hit me up on Twitter at Maurice Mercado. And JC, how can the people find out about you? You're far off away. You're in a land far away as well. You're not in New York. I'm in New York.
I'm building, like the Death Star, my social media presence being built. So, I don't know. I have a Twitter I never use.
Well, perhaps I can find new ways to motivate you.
Good luck finding me, man. I'm in the outer rim. I am far from the bright center. All right, man.
Well, if you want to get in touch with JC, you just hit me and I'll hit him.
There you go.
All right, man. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, JC. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you always.